All right, hello, this is Rich Leopold reporting to you from the road somewhere in Iowa. We just finished with our 26 city tour. So we did the announcement on January 4th of my running for governor, and then we took off on the road, and over the next 7 days we covered 27 small towns in Iowa. So we're talking like Albia, Maquoketa, Milford, Emmitsburg, places like that. I wanted to tell you a little bit about what we heard and what we didn't hear. So a lot of what we heard is that people in these places feel that small town and rural Iowa has not been heard. We saw that very clearly in the last election cycle when they flexed their muscle. So what were some of the specific issues? We heard a lot about local control. So things like schools. I'd hear stories like, we can afford to build a $2 million gymnasium, but we can't afford to keep the librarian. So from the Capitol, you often get silos or very restricted, all the money has strings to it and very little versatility, and they would like more control over that. We heard that whether that had to do with medical facilities, schools, economic development. Everybody realizes that the small towns in Iowa are going to have to do different things to be economically viable. But we didn't see a lot of that coming from the Capitol. Everything is so prescribed, we know best kind of thing. That ties into jobs. So we talked a lot about jobs. And for people in rural Iowa, jobs doesn't just mean numbers. You can't just count it. It has to be good jobs. It has to be jobs with benefits, jobs that can't be outsourced. So a lot of what we see from the politicians is just let's count the numbers rather than the quality of jobs. If you're going to have young people and small families come to rural Iowa, they have to be good paying jobs that can't be outsourced. We didn't hear a lot about party. I'm a good Democrat. We met mostly with Democrats, but there were a lot of independents that showed up and even some Republicans that showed up. And the message was pretty much the same. We all agreed on a lot of the different things. We heard a lot about mental health and access to care. So I talked to this one deputy sheriff, and he was telling me that, if they get a mental health case, they can go to the nearby hospital 20 miles away, and there they can hold that person for perhaps 24 hours, which is a ridiculous waste of money, by the way, to hold a mental health patient in an emergency room. And a lot of times they don't even have a mental health professional there anyway. Or they can take the person 100 miles to the nearest facility that actually treats that kind of thing. There's a lot of frustration in the rural countryside about access to mental health and what's been happening because of that. The Medicaid rollout too. So, not necessarily railing against managed care. Everybody understands that we have to have some performance and financial constraints. But the way it was rolled out, everything we see from the Capitol, from the politicians, is top down. Here it is. We know better than you do. We don't want your opinion. Just follow this program. That's not working for people. This takes time. It takes active listening and actually working with the rural folk and small town people to make this happen. We heard a lot about half measures. So things like water quality. Everybody's concerned about water quality. But what we do is, this year we're going to do 3 million, and then next year we're going to do 5 million on a multi-billion-dollar problem. So, let enough steam off the steam kettle so it doesn't blow up on the stove, but don't really do anything. Or the other favorite trick is just put it way out into the future. So we have a program, and 13 years from now, this will actually start putting money in the bank. That doesn't work for people. We need better water now. Stop the half measures, stop the delay until the next electoral cycle. Let's do something. So what we didn't hear. So while we were there, by the way, the governor and lieutenant governor did the state of the state address. The legislature came out with their top 4 priorities. A big thing was the $110 million shortfall. Now that's a lot of money. To you and I, that's a lot of money. But let's put it in perspective. This is a $7.5 billion state budget. So $110 million is about 1.5%. Now, what happens if your personal budget is cut back 1.5%? Maybe you don't go out to eat once a month, or maybe you have to get rid of a premium cable channel or something like that. What does the legislature and the governor and lieutenant governor's office propose? A tax on higher education. IPERS. So we didn't hear out there, things like state workers are making way too much money. How do we cut state trooper benefits? How do we deal with teachers and road workers and things like that? We didn't hear any of that, but yet that's where the legislature goes right away. Tax on Planned Parenthood. I didn't hear anything about that on this listening tour. Photo ID. So, we just went through this 2-year process where we were looking for voter fraud and stuff like that and found very, very few cases, but yet that's one of the legislative priorities is photo ID. Didn't hear much about that. So bottom line is, the thing we heard over and over again is people are hungry for this message. Let's go outside current politics. Let's take care of our own. Let's rebuild Iowa, especially rural Iowa. So when we did that first Facebook Live thing, I've never done anything like that before. I don't think any major politician has. We had over 11,000 views in the first 24 hours. Our website and social media, we've had over 35,000 hits on that already. As we were traveling from town to town, the people we talked to, regardless, were hungry for this message. So we're going to keep on talking this message. I urge you, please visit our Facebook site or our website, leopoldforiowa.com. Get involved, donate if you can, and I will see you out there across the state. Thanks for listening.